Once upon a time there lived a warrior who had never known defeat. For decades he had walked onto every battlefield with absolute certainty. His enemies trembled at the sight of him. His soldiers followed him without question. And every single time he emerged victorious. But this warrior was living a lie. And he didn't even know it. See, this warrior believed something that most people believe. He believed that his worth, his entire value as a human being, was tied to winning, to controlling outcomes, to being undefeated. So he spent every waking moment trying to control the uncontrollable. He obsessed over strategies that might fail. He prepared for scenarios he couldn't prevent. He trained until his body broke, not because it would guarantee victory, but because he was terrified of what would happen if he ever lost. And you know what? He was miserable. Behind closed doors, away from his soldiers and his admirers, this invincible warrior was drowning in anxiety. Because deep down he knew the truth that every person who builds their life on controlling outcomes eventually discovers. You cannot control everything. And trying to will destroy you. One day the warrior stood on a battlefield unlike any other he had ever seen. His scouts had warned him. His generals had begged him to retreat. But the warrior was too proud, too confident in his own invincibility. He marched his army straight into the teeth of an enemy force that was simply bigger, stronger, better positioned. As the sun rose over the battlefield that morning, the warrior watched his army crumble. Not because his soldiers were weak. Not because his strategy was poor. But because sometimes, no matter how hard you fight, the circumstances are simply beyond your control. The odds were against him. Fate was against him. And all the skill in the world couldn't change that. For the first time in his entire life, this warrior faced a truth he had been running from his entire career. He was going to lose. Not maybe. Not possibly. Definitely. And in that moment something happened inside him. His mind started racing. This can't be happening. I'm undefeated. I'm supposed to win. This isn't how my story is supposed to end. He looked at his soldiers, frightened, bleeding, falling. He looked at his enemies, overwhelming, relentless, inevitable. And he had a choice to make. He could rage against reality. He could curse his fate and die bitter, convinced that the universe had betrayed him. Or he could do something radical. He could accept it. Now when I say accept, I don't mean give up. I don't mean lie down and let the enemy walk over you. Acceptance doesn't mean weakness. In fact, it's the opposite. The warrior realized something in that moment that changed everything. He had been fighting two battles his entire career. The external battle against his enemies and the internal battle against reality itself. He had been wasting half his power fighting against what was actually happening. He had been exhausting himself trying to wish things were different, trying to control outcomes that were beyond his control. But what if he stopped? What if he stopped fighting against reality and started fighting with it? The warrior made a decision. He would lose this battle. That was fate. That was reality. And he accepted it completely. But he would not lose his honor. He would not lose his character. He would not lose his integrity. These were things within his control. So the warrior did something his enemies never expected. He didn't retreat. He didn't surrender. He didn't fight frantically, desperately, trying to change an unchangeable outcome. Instead, he fought perfectly. He fought with absolute clarity because he was no longer divided against himself. He wasn't fighting to win, he was fighting to be the best version of himself in that moment. Every movement had purpose. Every decision was deliberate. Every action was infused with honor and courage, not because it would change the outcome, but because it was the right way to respond to his fate. His soldiers watched their leader stand with unshakable calm in the face of certain defeat. They watched him move with grace and dignity while everything crumbled around him. And they fought harder not because they thought they would win, but because they were inspired to be worthy of such leadership. When the battle ended, the warrior was defeated. His army was scattered. His body was wounded. His legendary undefeated record was shattered. But as he walked away from that battlefield, bloodied, exhausted, broken, something extraordinary had happened to him. He was free. For the first time in his life, the warrior understood something that most people never discover. True strength is not about controlling outcomes. True strength is about maintaining your character regardless of outcomes. He had spent decades believing that winning made him powerful. But standing on that defeated battlefield, he realized the truth. He had never been more powerful than he was in that moment of loss. Because in losing, he had finally stopped fighting against reality. In accepting his fate, he had found peace. And in choosing to act with excellence despite knowing he would fail, he had discovered what actual virtue looks like. The warrior realized that he had been enslaved his entire life. enslaved to the need to win, to control, to be undefeated. But in losing everything, he had finally become free. And here's what most people don't understand. This warrior's story is your story. Right now, today, you're probably fighting a losing battle too. Maybe it's with your circumstances. Maybe it's with your health. Maybe it's with people who've disappointed you or a dream that didn't work out. Maybe it's with an outcome you desperately wanted to control but couldn't. And you're suffering not because of what's happening, but because you're fighting against what's happening. You're at war with reality itself. So here's what the warrior learned that you need to learn too. Stop fighting against reality. Accept what is happening. Accept what you cannot control. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Focus only on what's actually yours. Your effort. Your character. Your choices. Your response. These are the only things that belong to you. These are the only things you can control. Choose excellence regardless of the outcome. Don't fight to win. Fight to be the best version of yourself. Do it because it's right, not because it guarantees success. When you stop needing to control outcomes and start focusing on controlling your character, something magical happens. You become undefeated in the way that actually matters. Not because you never lose, you will lose. You will fail. You will be disappointed. But because losing will never destroy you. Because your worth is no longer tied to external victories. Because you've finally discovered that true strength was always inside you, waiting to be found. The warrior discovered this on a battlefield. The question is, will you discover it before life forces you to? Shake off the weakness that comes from trying to control what you cannot. Your power lies only in what is truly yours.